Trade wars, tariffs, and economic battles. There aren't just headlines, there are shifts that can reshape entire economies. And now tariffs are making a comeback in a big way. The US President Donald Trump has proposed a fresh wave of tariffs targeting steel and aluminum imports with a 25% tax on steel and more yet to be defined tariffs on aluminum. If that sounds familiar, it's because similar measures were introduced during his previous term, sparking global economic tensions. But here is the real kicker. Trump wants a reciprocal tariff system, a fancy way of saying that if another country taxes US goods heavily, the US will tax their imports just as much. This move has reignited trade disputes, particularly with the European Union and Canada, two of America's biggest trade partners. The question now is, are we heading for another full-blown trade war? Before we break it all down, make sure to hit that like button and share this video. It really helps us get the word out to more people.
It's a big deal. This is the beginning of making America rich again. Mr. Secretary, do you have anything to say? As you know, Howard is Secretary of Commerce, doing a fantastic job. And what do you have to say about it?
So when you imposed the tariffs the first time, right, you added 120,000 jobs. And since that time, it's been picked away and nicked away and excluded away, and we've lost 107,000 jobs. And remember, these aren't just general jobs. These are steel workers in America, and now you're going to bring them back. You're going to bring those 120,000 jobs back to America. You are the president who's standing up for the American steel worker, and I am just tremendously impressed and delighted to stand next to you.
Trump's strategy hinges on closing what he sees as unfair trade gaps. Take the EU for example, it slaps a 10% tariff on cars imported from the US, while America only charges 2.5% on European cars. Sounds unfair? Maybe, but the US also imposes a massive 25% tariff on imported pickup trucks, a fact that often gets left out of the discussion. Now countries on the receiving end of these tariffs aren't taking them lightly. Both the EU and Canada have signaled they won't sit back, with these regions importing over $550 billion of US goods annually. A retaliation could have serious economic consequences. Canada, a key US trading partner, isn't staying silent. Trump has not only proposed tariffs but also stirred controversy by suggesting, half-jokingly, that Canada should just become the 51st US state.
As an example, Canada, if we make it in the United States, we don't need it to be made in Canada. We'll have the jobs. That's why Canada should be our 51st state.
That comment didn't go over well north of the border. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau fired back, reaffirming Canada's sovereignty and calling Trump's remarks absurd. Meanwhile, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is pushing for Canada to retaliate with a 100% tariff on Tesla imports, directly targeting Elon Musk, a vocal Trump supporter. The Canadian steel industry is also feeling the pressure. Catherine Cobden, CEO of the Canadian Steel Producers Association, have warned that these tariffs could be devastating for Canadian manufacturers. She is urging the government to strike back hard. Beyond trade, Canada is also working on boosting its military presence, particularly in the Arctic. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre recently proposed plans to expand Canada's Arctic military capabilities, including building a new base, doubling the number of Inuit Rangers, and investing in more icebreakers. To pay for these initiatives, Poilievre wants to cut foreign aid and redirect the funds towards national defense. This move, while controversial, aligns with growing concerns over Arctic sovereignty as global superpowers eye the region's untapped resources. The European Union isn't standing idly by either. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has made it clear that the EU is ready to counter any aggressive US trade measures. French President Emmanuel Macron has echoed these sentiments, arguing that the US should focus on fixing trade imbalances with China instead of punishing its allies. So what's the EU's plan? They are looking at a mix of strategies, including reintroducing tariffs on symbolic American exports like bourbon whiskey and motorcycles. But they are also leveraging something called the anti-coercion instrument, which could make it harder for US companies to win European government contracts. That's a bad news for American tech firms and financial service providers that rely on European market. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Trump's tariff plan is a smart move for the US economy, or is it setting up another trade war? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. As tensions rise with the US, Canada and the EU are doubling down on their trade relationship. The Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, which has been in place since 2017, has already boosted trade significantly. Between 2016 and 2021, Canadian exports to the EU jumped by a whopping 46.4%. Canadian Trade Minister Mary Ng recently visited Brussels to discuss ways to further streamline trade and help small businesses expand into European markets. Despite CETA's success, only 57% of eligible Canadian exporters were using its benefits as of 2020, meaning there is still a lot of untapped potential. One of the biggest areas of cooperation between Canada and the EU is critical minerals. These resources are essential for electric vehicles, renewable energy, and high-tech industries. To reduce dependence on China, Canada and the EU formed the Strategic Partnership on Raw Materials in 2021. Canada is also ramping up its own mining investments to ensure a stable, sustainable supply of these minerals. With billions being poured into the sector, this could be a game changer for the global economy. Canada is positioning itself as a reliable supplier, while the EU is looking for alternatives to avoid being overly reliant on any single country. Trump's tariff plans might be aimed at protecting American industries, but they could just as easily backfire. If countries like Canada and the EU retaliate, US businesses and consumers could feel the impact through higher prices and reduced market access. Given how interconnected the global economy is, even a minor trade dispute can send shockwaves through multiple industries. At the same time, these moves are accelerating efforts by Canada and the EU to become less dependent on the US. With new trade agreements, military expansions, and strategic resource partnerships, the global balance of economic power could shift in the coming years. So are we headed for another major trade war, or will cooler heads prevail? One thing's for sure, this story is far from over. If you found this breakdown helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future updates. Thanks for watching and see you next time.